Hey everybody, this is Rihanna from A Frugal Life, and today we're going to be talking about smart things I learned from my frugal living grandma. So if you have watched my previous video on my Great Depression tips for my frugal living grandma, you might be excited to watch this video as well. So I did some basic things that my frugal living grandma did back in the day on that other video, and I'm happy to put it up in the link up above. It's been very popular among my audience on Facebook as well as YouTube, and I encourage you to go look at it later. So this is a part 2 to that series. So I've gone through and made sure that none of these things are repeats. These are all new ideas, or at least new things in this video. Of course, they're not new ideas because I've been doing them my whole life, and my grandma did them her whole life, and she taught me to do them as well. So number 1, which may be a little bit harder nowadays because people don't keep cash around, but it's to collect coins and even dollar bills. But back in the day, we collected coins, and it was fun. As a kid, you loved to play with change. It was fun to roll them up and go to the bank when they were all full. But this was a huge deal because we got to collect them up as kids and then use them for toys later, or things that we wanted later, like McDonald's on those very special occasions that we went to fast food. We could get something extra with our coins that we had saved up. So we got coins from my grandparents, from whoever gave them to us, and saved them up. We even had little entrepreneur things like lemonade stands and things like that, and we would collect all that cash in a piggy bank. But it's not just for kids, so my grandma collected all of her coins as well. So back in the day, she didn't use credit cards, she used cash. So for every transaction she did, all of the coins went to a big 5-gallon jug. And when that jug was full, we would dump them all out because they didn't have change machines back then, and we would sit on the floor all together and roll them up. So it was a fun activity to do together. We got to learn about money, and we actually got to save up for things that we needed down the line. So grandma would use that for our vacations, our family reunion vacations to the beach and things like that, or whatever she needed. So collecting coins was her way of saving a little bit after each transaction. Nowadays, you can do things like collect coins automatically by having it roll up into your bank account. So if you don't use cash, you can collect your change as well using roll-up features on your bank account. I know Bank of America and Wells Fargo both do it. You might want to check with your account as well. Although if you have a family, it's such a great fun activity to just roll those coins and take them to the bank later if you actually use cash. Number 2, another rule in our household was clothes do not go out of style, clothes wear out. Or if you're a kid, you grow out of them. But grandma had shirts she was wearing when my mother was little, so her shirts could be up to 40 years old. And a side note, I will talk about this later, but she made all of those shirts herself. So they were probably more high quality because she made them herself than the fast fashion you have nowadays. But I always say to buy secondhand, you buy name brand secondhand, and they last a lot longer. But clothing styles in our household were simple, basic, to the point, and they would last forever. So we didn't go in for fast fashion or trends or anything like that. Grandma would wear her clothes for decades, and as kids we would wear them till we wore them out. So it's a great idea to just have a uniform in your house, maybe t-shirt and jeans or something like that, rather than fast fashion items that go out of style quickly and you have to get rid of, or that wear out quickly. Number 3, the other frugal living rule in grandma's household was homemade clothes are super cute. My grandma was a big time sewer. She actually took a class when she was younger on stretch sewing, so she was big on sewing with stretch fabrics, but she would also sew with other fabrics as well. So when I was in 4th grade, every single item I wore to school was homemade by grandma, and she actually made the cutest set of clothes. It was the 80s, so they were little sweatshirts and sweat tops with little skirts and shorts, and everything matched. So it was all coordinated together. It was grays and pinks and blues, and you could match the top with the bottom or the other top. There was little hearts on them, heart appliques she put. In 4th grade, I thought it was amazing. Obviously back then, we didn't have to worry about the internet and things like that, so people were accepting of what you wore no matter what it was. Later on, I actually got all my clothes out of the JCPenney catalog because grandma was slowing down a little bit on her sewing, but she sewed all of her life. She actually sewed all of the dresses for one of her daughter's weddings, from bridal gown to bridesmaids gowns and all of that. So you can sew your own clothes, you can recycle and upcycle clothes from the thrift store. You don't have to spend a lot on fabric. You can totally do that by looking up YouTube tutorials online, and it's a super frugal thing to do. People think it's actually expensive to sew, but it's not, as long as you buy your fabric on clearance or reuse items that you already have or can buy on thrift. Number 4, Rule in Grandma's house, storytelling was an art. She taught us all about storytelling. Storytelling was written down and it was oral in our household. So Grandma would take us on long walks and tell us stories about when she was a kid, when she lived with her grandparents as a kid. She would tell us stories about my mother's childhood and my aunts and uncles' childhood. She would tell us stories of the Great Depression. Some of my fondest memories was when we went on our family reunion vacations to the beach, and she would take us along the beach and we would beg for a story. So we weren't totally into phones back then. We didn't have phones that we played with. You didn't plug your kid into the TV or anything like that. We didn't even have cable as a kid, even though most of my friends did. So our lives revolved around stories, and my grandma would tell them, or we would tell them to each other. We would make them up, and as a result, I grew up to love reading, writing, and telling stories. So it was a great educational activity, and it was fond memories from my grandmother, and it was something she passed on to all of her children and her grandchildren. So remember, storytelling is an art that can be passed on. Number 5, the rule for my grandmother is furniture does not go out of style. It gets mended, repaired, or it wears out. So just like clothing, furniture in my grandmother's house lasted decades. And it was easier back then because we bought real furniture that was hardwood. She had furniture that was passed on from her parents or her siblings or her grandparents. You would pass on furniture from one family to another, and it was more high quality, so it was easier to last a long time. Obviously, if you have a house full of IKEA bookshelves and things like that, those aren't going to last forever. So I actually suggest buying high quality furniture. And we always buy our furniture used, or we spread the word that we're interested in used furniture. I've gotten very high quality furniture from my parents when they got new furniture, from other people when they got new furniture. So we have the same rule in our household. Furniture does not go out of style, it wears out. So we don't buy new furniture just because we want a new color or something like that. If something breaks, we mend it. If it needs to be recovered, we recover it. We only throw out furniture when we absolutely have to, and as a result, we save thousands and thousands over the last couple decades. So remember, furniture doesn't go out of style, it wears out. Number 6, this is a hard one for some people, and I actually don't do it myself completely, but in my grandmother's household, everything was paid for via cash. There's no such thing as a credit card. So she did not have a credit card, even for emergencies. They had savings for emergencies. I will actually talk about emergency funds, or I have talked about emergency funds in another video. I will post that link up above. But if you do not go into debt, your life will feel so much better. You will have so much weight off of your heart and your mind and all of that. There will be less stress, anxiety. So I do have a small credit card that I use for emergencies, and we have a couple of store credit cards that we use for emergencies like Home Depot and Lowe's and things like that, because we do own our own house. But back in the day when I was little, there was no credit. She even purchased her cars for cash. So if you can do it, no credit cards is a great way to save some money on interest and on anxiety. Next, hanging out with friends and family is done at home or at their homes. We didn't go out as children to places like restaurants and things like that. I talked about how that was a luxury in my last Frugal Living Depression video. But if you wanted to hang out with friends and family, it was definitely done at home. You barbecued at home, you had a meal at home that you shared with others, you went to other people's houses and shared a meal. Sometimes you would go to the park together, but we never spent money to go out with friends and family. It was always something that we hosted either in our home or they hosted in their home. So it was actually more homey. You learned about other people's lifestyles and how they lived. You learned how to behave in other people's homes as a kid. And you didn't have to spend a lot of money to go out. We didn't go out to places like arcades with our friends or movies with our friends or things like that. Our friends would just come over and play in the backyard. So as kids, that was totally fine with us. We didn't need to spend a lot of money to have fun. And we were used to people coming in and out of our homes a lot. So we would have aunts and uncles come visit from far away and stay over and things like that. It was just great fun. We would also get to go to other cities because we would stay at the homes of our friends and family, mainly our family. So we got to experience other cities and other cultures by staying with friends. We never stayed in a hotel. I did not stay in a hotel ever until I was an adult. So I didn't even know what staying in a hotel was like as a kid. So because of the nature of the world right now, maybe you can't have people in your house as much, but you can have barbecues outside. It's a great time for that where I live. It's summer, and you can do virtual visits as well on Zoom and other locations. And when all of this dies down in the world and it's safe to go out again, you can also have visitors in your home. So this seems to be a super controversial one that I bring up in other videos. It always gets a lot of negative comments. I don't know why, because it's an obvious thing, but if you're frugal and you're trying to live frugally, don't smoke or drink. My grandma never took a drink of alcohol in her life that we know of. She professes she didn't while I saw her, at least, and she never smoked a cigarette or smoked anything else, and that saved a great deal of money. And this was back in the 80s when everybody was smoking and it wasn't a huge thing. So now people are definitely trying to quit smoking. Maybe they vape and then cut down to nothing, but also drinking alcohol is a thing. It costs a lot of money if you drink at home, and it costs even more if you go out. So it's just something to think about. We did not learn that smoking and drinking was a normal thing, and we didn't do it. So now we don't do it now. My husband and I don't do it in our home either. Number 11 goes for more than just furniture and clothes, is we don't toss it, we mend it. So you can mend all sorts of things. My niece actually used to live with us as a child, and she always thought that my husband could fix anything, because basically he can. So she never even thought that toys should get thrown away when they were broken, because she would just bring them to my husband to fix. So you don't have to throw things away. Look up on YouTube how to fix them if it's something that you want to keep, and you don't have to replace things. Most things can be fixed. So if they can't be fixed, obviously you have to replace them. But the first thing you should always think about is mending them. So my grandma fixed everything. She could do things that typically men do around the house. She would do household chores and fix plumbing and things like that, or my grandpa would do it. In my house, my husband does all of that. We definitely fix it ourselves before we replace it. Number 12, I know you're gonna tell me you don't have time to do this, but you actually do, and you might wanna try it out. So my grandma's rule was we line dry clothes. So she always did have a washer in her house, because my grandpa made sure that she had one in every house we lived in. And we did have a dryer in some of them that she would use in emergency situations or in bad weather. But other than that, she line dried everything. And in most homes, she had a line outside. You can purchase one on Amazon for very cheap. But we, as an adult, when I didn't live in homes that I owned, we had lines outside on our porches in our apartments. And now, even though I do dry a lot of things because I live in a really hot, dusty area, it's hard to line dry outside where I live without getting the clothes dirty again. I do dry things over a rack in the bathroom. So bedspreads, sheets, heavy t-shirts or dresses, and towels, anything that would take a long time to dry in the dryer and a lot of energy, actually goes on a hanger and it gets hung up in the bathroom, or gets hung up over a rack in the bathroom, or gets hung up over the shower. So you can line dry inside your home as long as it's not humid or wet inside your home. So you do need to check with the weather, but I just do what my grandmother did and hang things up, and it saves a ton of money in electricity. Number 13, and this is a running joke on the internet, so you're gonna know what I mean, but in my grandmother's household, food storage was what food came in at the store. So I never saw her buy a piece of Tupperware or food storage, things like Ziploc or anything like that. Everything was stored in things that things already came from. So you know that meme with all the butter dishes where everything's in it with the leftovers? That was my grandmother. She also saved things like spaghetti jars. Anything that could be reclosed and put back in the fridge with something else in it was used for food storage. Even in the pantry for rice and things like that. Almost everything you buy in the store that has a tight lid can be reused. So all sorts of things like sour cream and dishes and butter dishes and spaghetti jars and all of that can be reused, and you never actually have to buy food storage containers. So try that in the future. Just make sure you clean them up well, maybe some masking tape for labels, or do the old thing we used to do and open up all those butter dishes to see what's inside. Number 14, in my grandma's house, simple food was the best food. And one of the things I learned from her was potato soup is an amazing dinner or lunch. So potato soup was a big thing in my grandmother's household. She would make it all the time, and you would not believe how incredibly cheap it is to make potato soup for 2 to 8 people. It can make up to a huge pot or a tiny pot. I will put a link to my potato soup recipe down below, but it's just an example. There can be all sorts of simple things that you make in your household: grilled cheese and tomato soup, ramen. It doesn't have to be soup, it can be pancakes. I do have a video up above of some simple things that I make and eat in our household. You don't have to make a great big meal, but as an example, potato soup in my grandmother's house was a staple. Number 15, how about for the kids, right? Simple food is perfectly acceptable for kids as well. And in my household, when we grew up, bread and butter was a great snack. In fact, kids love a slice of bread and butter. In my house, we watch kids and they actually will go grab a piece of bread and eat it as a snack. So they don't need things like donuts and chips. You can make them yourself, of course, and treat them with them. But if they just want a regular old snack, they do not need a juice box and a bag of mini chips. A piece of bread and butter is fine. A nice piece of toast is fine. Cinnamon sugar toast was always a fun treat as well if we were getting a sugar snack. So bread and butter, peanut butter sandwiches, simple things like that are perfectly acceptable snacks for kids. Number 16, summer is outside. In our household, Grandma took us outside for summer. We took those long walks where she told us stories. We went berry foraging in parks and in neighbors' backyards. We went and did all sorts of things outside for free all the time. So summer was an outdoor thing, not an indoor thing. There were no video games in our household. We didn't have cable, and we loved it. So it's perfectly acceptable to toss your kids in their clothes and throw them outside for the day during summer. Unless, of course, it's like 110 degrees, then at least give them a sprinkler to run through. Number 17 is we share with our neighbors. We share with our neighbors now, but my grandmother shared with our neighbors all the time. We had some great neighbors next door, and in my grandfather's victory garden that he grew in the 80s, not during the war, we had all sorts of fruits and vegetables, and I talk about this on my other Great Depression video, but he grew an acre's worth of fruits and vegetables every single year. My grandma would put them up and can them, and she would put them in baskets or in bags and bring them to the neighbors as well as friends and family. So we would share with them, and in return, they would share with us. So nowadays, people don't always get to know their neighbors. I think it's important that you do. Go and introduce yourself to your neighbor and bring them something that you made, or bring them something that you enjoy, or offer them to come over for a barbecue. Being close with your neighbors is important. It was big in our lives as kids because your neighbors were your resources when you needed something or when there was an emergency, and we've grown up to believe that as adults as well. So share with your neighbors. My grandma did. Number 19 is all clothes are washable. There's no such thing as dry cleaners. In our household, when I was growing up, all of our clothes were washable and non-dryable. My grandma did not own a single thing, and nobody in our house owned a single thing, even for special occasions that had to be dry cleaned. Because why would you pay somebody else to clean your clothes, was what my grandma believed. So we never dry cleaned anything. We never missed out on anything. Everything was just washable. You could still wear special occasion clothes, and nowadays there are lots and lots of clothes that you do not need to dry clean. So it's possible to get away with never dry cleaning anything. I have not dry cleaned anything since I worked for a dry cleaner when I was 16. So one of my first jobs full-time was actually working for a dry cleaner. I could dry clean my clothes for free. That's the only time I've ever used a dry cleaner, was when it was free. So be sure to buy your clothes machine washable or at least hand washable, and you won't have to pay somebody else to clean those clothes. So that's it for the day. Those are more tips from my frugal living grandmother when she grew up in the Great Depression and taught us to live the same way. If you like videos like this on personal finance, side hustles, and living your best life on more money, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. It's really important in order to help me get more videos out to you. If you subscribe, I know which ones you like, and I can tell. And as always, if nobody has told you how very, very, very special you are, please remember that you are special to me. You are all my friends and family on the internet. I love you all so very, very much, and I cannot wait to talk to you in my next video.